Welcome to the Brand and Market Podcast, where branding clarity meets marketing strategy. I'm your host, Allie Haney, founder of Brand and Market, a boutique agency dedicated to helping small businesses craft intentional brands and effective marketing plans. Each week, I share practical tips and insights to help you, especially those of you in real estate-related industries, build a standout brand to attract your brand's biggest fans. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. I'm your host, Allie Haney, and today I have with me a very special guest. Her name is Hannah Pobar, and she is the founder of Home Studio List. If you haven't heard of Home Studio List yet, and you are a short-term rental owner or a photographer, which I know we have some of those on this podcast as listeners as well, then you definitely need to check her out. I actually have our Kentucky property listed on Home Studio List. And I first came into Hannah's sphere. It was a few years ago that I first became aware of her. I don't even know if she knows this, but she was interviewed on one of my friend's podcasts, Cassie O'Driscoll. And when I heard Hannah's founder story and journey, I was like, wow, this woman is impressive. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah so she can tell us a little bit more about herself as well as her love child Home Studio List.
Yes, well, I'm so happy to be here, and it's so awesome to be speaking with you today, Allie. So thank you so much for having me. I'm Hannah Pobar, the founder of Home Studio List. We are a platform of styled homes available to rent by the hour for photo shoots, film productions all across the US and Canada now. We've been around for the past almost 10 years. This is almost our 10-year anniversary, so I'm really excited for everything we have ahead. But Home Studio List really grew out of this natural need that I had as a photographer to find beautiful photo locations. I had this gorgeous styled apartment in San Francisco. I thought, how can I make some extra money off this? This was, the early days of Airbnb as well. And so here we are now 10 years later. This company has grown from just a handful of spaces in San Francisco where I was living at the time to now all across the country and Canada. And we've just loved the journey, and it's so fun to be chatting with you today and sharing some of that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you guys were in Canada too. What was that looking like when you expanded across international borders?
Yeah, for years we had so many requests to be in Canada, and obviously, they're just our neighbors up north. So 2 years ago was when we launched Canada, and that was amazing. And I think just opened up a whole new creative community for us. We had so much already pent up demand for those locations. And so it just felt like a natural extension at the time.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't realize that you guys were international. That's absolutely incredible. So, funny enough, it was after I listened to Cassie's episode, I did some branding photography. That was one of the iterations of my business. And it's always a struggle. The first thing clients say, especially if they work from home often, which a lot of service providers do, they're like, well, my home office isn't pretty. That's the first thing out of their mouths on a consult call. Where can we shoot? And Home Studio List is the perfect solution to that problem.
I love to hear that, and it's such a fantastic resource, especially for anyone in our industries that your industry very much relates to home. And so it's really hard to convey this professionalism and power in your industry when your own space might not totally be up to your style or standard, or simply you just want to kind of come into a new space and be inspired. As a photographer, I felt so much inspiration when I would go into a cute little library nook that had amazing moody light. And, it's really hard to recreate that. Even if you say have the beautiful shelves behind you, it's how many props and styled elements do you need to bring in to really bring it to life sometimes. So, sometimes you just step into a space and it completely inspires you. And that's our goal with Home Studio List.
That's awesome. Do you still shoot on top of being founder of Home Studio List, or has that kind of taken a back burner?
It definitely took a back burner. I feel like my career has had all these stepping stones throughout it. And I feel like photography was this art and medium that I loved getting to learn. But ultimately, I'm a business girl. I loved running the business of photography. And there was kind of this point that I hit that was just I am maxed out of my interest in growing my photography skills. And at that point, it was kind of the perfect transition. I had moved to San Francisco. I was dabbling in startups, and I always wanted to start one of my own. And so Home Studio List kind of just fell into my lap, and it magically worked. And so I kept investing in it. And here we are, 10 years later.
I feel the same. With photography, it was definitely an exchange for time or money, unless you decided to to grow an associate team or something like that, which is it's a different type of business. Like there's like operations side of business and it seems like you have that kind of brain, but then there's also like the managing of people side of business and it sounds like you found your sweet spot at Home Studio List to be able to scale a business online without having to like bring in a bunch of extra players as well.
Exactly. And not going to lie, like I absolutely felt so much inspiration from the photography industry. So I love that I still get to like have my foot in that pool, but I am not necessarily shooting all that much anymore. I will say, like, the rise of content creation, I'm still very much invested in that as a medium, but I'm not shooting weddings anymore. I'm not the go-to photographer anymore. When people ask me, I'm like, let me give you some recommendations. We have an amazing vendor directory. I will set you up with somebody who really cares about all those perfect details for you.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that. You guys launched that a couple years ago, didn't you?
We did, and it's been a fantastic resource for just connecting photographers to clients. We have so many clients who come to us. Maybe they have a small business or a brand, like they're making candles and they need to, create a production. Sometimes they find Home Studio List before they've actually found all the other like partners in the production puzzle. And so we built the directory really to be able to help people find local vendors and production resources near them.
Wow, that's incredible. I forgot about that portion of it because I am also a vendor on there. Yeah, yeah. So let's take it from like the photographer's perspective back to the host's perspective. Walk us through what it's like to become a host on Home Studio List as an owner.
Yeah. So as an owner, you already have kind of done the hard part, which is like owning a beautiful space. And so from there, we try to make it really easy for you. We take applications on the website, homestudiolist.com. The application is designed to be less than 2 minutes. I think the part that really trips people up the most is just having photography of their space. We don't require professional photography, although I will say that really helps your space get booked. And so we do even have like a nifty little guide on the website that can walk someone through taking listing photos of their own space if that's not something that they already have. iPhone photos are fine, but again, like the higher quality photography you have, the higher kind of price point you can yield, and ultimately kind of the more interest you drum up. But we keep the application really simple. We ask you a couple questions about your space, and then we'll get back to you within a week on if your space has been approved or denied. I would say most of the time when we're denying a space, it's simply just because the price point might not match the quality of the photography and therefore level of styling. So when we're accepting these applications, we're really looking for spaces that look editorial in a sense. They do not have to be the fanciest properties. And in fact, I think that's a surprising detail. People think their space needs to be like an architectural digest, like cover photo home. And that is not true at all. Like a lot of our spaces that are super popular are truly everyday homes. If you just think about the breadth of different productions that people might be having, a lot of a lot of people are looking for just a natural aesthetic for this product to live in that environment. And so we try to keep it easy in a sense of you don't need it to be ultimately styled, but a level of styling and curation just really helps. We like to keep the bar high just in terms of the way that we're presenting our spaces, and we want them to feel inspiring to people. So photos, probably the number one reason that we're not accepting spaces. Otherwise, we take those applications rolling and we can get you on the site within 2 weeks.
I think it's probably a pretty safe bet to say that most people are. Is it the studio that comes first? Like they want to use it as a studio, or is it already typically a place that's an Airbnb that might already have professional photography done and kind of like take that obstacle of photography out of the way because you already have those listing photos?
Yeah, if you already have the listing photos, you are way on your way. That's usually the hurdle and challenge for people, and mostly, general, like regular homeowners who just don't have high quality photography of their space. Short term rental owners, like you already have a leg up. What I've found to be really interesting about short term rental properties on Home Studio List is usually we get the very like standard short term rental photography set that photographs like the room really wide. And sometimes I say, like, that's fantastic. People love to have spatial awareness of just how large this space is, how much crew they can fit into a space, where they might be placing lights and equipment. So the more photos, the merrier. But I think a really interesting opportunity for short-term rental owners on the photography side is utilizing their space and styling it a little bit more editorially. Like, when you're like browsing through Instagram and you see a really pretty, like curated home setup, the shelves are styled, the couch has a blanket thrown over the back of it. Like, just these little details that make it feel a little bit more editorial in a sense. That really helps people bridge the gap from this is an Airbnb to this is a space that with a couple small adjustments, I'll be able to use as the backdrop for my production.
Makes sense. I know that there's like a real trend in listing photography for Airbnb specifically that is pushing away from the more like sterile, I guess would be the best word to use for that, like sterile photography and a more push into like lifestyle photography. So some of the bigger, higher performing listings I've seen redoing their listing images on Airbnb and VRBO to even include models, like actual real people, even if it's something as simple as like hands in the photo of it with a charcuterie board or like a pour over coffee situation. So do you find that those like perform well on home studio lists as well?
Absolutely. Yep, without a doubt. That's kind of, we're selling that styled feeling. And so all of those shots that you've just mentioned would perform really well on home studio lists. And additionally, we, repurpose images through the site via our marketing as well. And so the more editorial in a sense your listing photos are, the more opportunity you kind of have to be included in our marketing and reach a wider audience.
Oh, that's good to know. That's a like, yeah,
Yeah.
fun little extra tidbit.
Yeah, because we don't do anything like, some of these platforms you can pay to be like rank higher and things like that in the feed. Everything that we have is just very algorithm based. And so like popular spaces that get a lot of reviews, that get a lot of views, those are the ones that surface more. And so we are always trying to bring in and remarket different listings, but if the imagery isn't super high quality, it's harder for us to include. We always kind of go back to having that beautiful imagery.
I'm going to take us into left field for a second, just because something that you said triggered something in my brain. As a founder, like coming from the photography field into what's really a tech platform, what was that transition like? Because you were like saying that it comes from properties rank higher in the algorithm based off of the number of reviews. How do you set that up on the back end? Oh my goodness, that's got to be a learning curve.
Totally. And there's, a lot of engineering feats that go on behind the scenes that even I don't understand like the technicalities of, but kind of like we talked about the stepping stones of like our careers. I went from photography to working at a startup as a designer, like product design, UI, UX, and kind of the inner workings of an e-commerce website in San Francisco. And so that was my like dabbling in the tech world. And I really got to understand like, how do you have an idea and take it to a company and raise money and create millions of dollars out of this like idea. And as a photographer, I hadn't really been exposed to like that level. I thought like I can take my photo business from $0 to like $100,000, but like how do you extend past that? And so working in San Francisco, I really got to understand that. I was surrounded by brilliant engineers, like brilliant designers. San Francisco's like the tech mecca of the world. And so it was a really interesting experience. I learned so much, and I was able to kind of infuse all of those learnings into Home Studio List. People are surprised. Home Studio List is actually platformed on Squarespace. We have like hacked it to infinity and beyond. I love Squarespace because it's so user friendly on the front end, and I want to go in and like make these edits myself. Whereas sometimes when you custom create something, and 10 years ago, the landscape was really different than it is now today. Like I started using no code engineering, design, and like management CRM tools 10 years ago. And I remember showing these to my engineering friends, and they were like, I don't know about this. Like, this doesn't really seem super robust or secure, all the things. And 10 years later, like that's the new, that's where everyone is like trending towards.
You saw the trend before it took off.
Honestly, it was out of necessity. It wasn't me trying to be cool by any means. It was just like, I can't afford an engineer. So, like, I can't afford this, $70 a month Airtable subscription. So, I'll use that. And here we are with like so many different tools and automations that have been built from a really, really, really scrappy base.
I love that. Would you, if you could do it all over again, would you do it differently?
You know, honestly, The more I learn, the more I want to add on and build. But I love how amazing the base of what we created is. Like me and this girl Zoe who does operations with me, we built it together, and we always get on the calls. Like, well, we won't talk for like 6 months to a year sometimes because there's no issues, and we're like adding things, But we laugh like this has been such a solid base that we built. Like sometimes I'm scared of changing it because I don't want to introduce anything that will like be erroneous to it. So no, but I will say now the tools are just so much better. Like if I could start fresh today, I think I would be able to get a lot more mileage. But those weren't options 10 years ago.
Hey, host, you've got a lot of responsibilities on your plate: guest communication, cleaning coordination, marketing, and everything in between. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and love all the great actionable tips, but just have zero time to execute on them, then it might be time to get some help. You're in luck. I've been a superhost for over 6 years with over 200 five-star reviews, and I'm here to help you elevate your short-term rental business. I've co-hosted properties across 3 states, managing everything remotely and ensuring my clients' guests have a seamless 5-star experience every single time. Here at Brandon Market, we focus on creating a unique guest experience through cohesive branding for your property. It gives boutique hotel rather than side hustle short-term rental. So whether you need help with guest communication, maintaining your listing, or just keeping things running smoothly day to day, my co-hosting services take the stress off your shoulders so you can focus on growing your business and portfolio or getting that side hustle back over to the side. Let me make your listing into your legacy, one great guest experience at a time. Ready to take your short-term rental to the next level? Head to www.brandonmarket.co/co-hosting to learn more about how my co-hosting services can help you. Let's take it back to what it looks like to actually host for owners and what that could look like in terms of scheduling with like your regular short-term rental bookings. So I'm a short-term rental owner. Say we are booked out pretty much average like Thursday to Monday, but we have some openings like Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So is there any way to integrate Home Studio List with an existing like property management software that we might have on the back end? How is the best way that you suggest to bring that in as an extra income stream without having to increase the amount of operations on the host side?
Yeah, so currently we work on a request basis. So anytime a request comes in, you'll get an email to your inbox that has all the details of that request, and it's available for you to approve or deny. We've toyed with the idea of having like the concept of instant book and things like that, but just due to the nature of productions and how they don't all follow the same like short-term rental mold of like this is how many people will be there. It's pretty understood what they'll be doing with the space at that time. We try to get as much detail as we can on these productions so that the hosts are able to really vet if this is a production they're interested in hosting or not. For example, someone might come to you and say, I have a 45-person production. We want to decorate for Christmas. We want to add Christmas lights to the exterior. Like, this is a big shoot, right? A lot of our shoots are 3 people, 3 hours, smaller arrangements. But in the off chance that that larger production just doesn't appeal to you or isn't something that you're able to accommodate at this time, we want to make sure you have full transparency and are active in like approving or denying that request before we automatically roll you into a committed reservation. And so right now we'll send over those details via email for the host to approve or deny. As the host, you're able to, leave a comment or make a suggestion to the team, or perhaps you're booked on Thursday, but you have an opening Tuesday. You can make a suggested date or time change and, have that back and forth conversation with the guest until it feels like something that you're comfortable approving. But we definitely want to explore in the future more direct integrations for people who are short-term rental property owners. I think you guys as a community have your calendars locked in a lot more than the average homeowner who is like doing this as a fun, exciting little passive income stream. So we want to create a better family of tools that will integrate directly with calendars. Right now, we don't have that, but we do keep it pretty simple and flexible through the request-based model.
So I know that you mentioned already that you do mostly hourly bookings, but for a production of like a bigger scale, like installing Christmas decorations and stuff, like what's the range? Like anywhere from like a 1 hour session to what?
Some of the shoots we've done are 2 weeks. So a committed 2 week booking. We've had guests who really large companies who have, put families into a hotel for the week while they utilize their home. So it really can become a large production. Again, that is not, we keep it on a request basis so that you have full control over, like, I am comfortable with that or I am not. Short term rental, that typically is a no-brainer for this community just because overall the wear and tear of a photo shoot is typically smaller than that of like actual renters who are like utilizing the kitchen, sleeping in the beds, utilizing the bathroom. Obviously production will be utilizing some elements of those, but I hear and find from the community that typically a photo shoot is a little bit less of an involved orchestration than an actual stay.
So, to give the short term rental owners that are listening a little bit of an idea of how much additional income could come from this, do you have an average hourly rate? Of course, you've already mentioned that it depends on, design and photography to get people in the door. But just to give a general idea, what would be your average hourly rate?
Our average hourly is $175 per hour. So when you think about that for like an 8 hour production, that's the same 1 day rental essentially as an overnight stay. So space dependent, that could be very lucrative.
Absolutely. And how do in your experience, the owners that do those like more involved day long plus shoots, how do they price their spaces for that?
I would say a competitive hourly rate is just essential. And we as a team, our reservation management team and curators, like will always give our suggestions on what an appropriate hourly rate is based on the creative community in your area, the styling and like look and feel and size of your space. That helps us get a sense for what kinds of productions it could be utilized for. Obviously, a 6,000 square foot house has a little bit more opportunity than a 500 square foot apartment. So we try to help people find the right listing price for them. At that, though, listing prices can absolutely vary. I mean, we have some spaces on the site for less than $100 an hour, and we have dozens of spaces for over $500 an hour. So to be like commissioning that really high rate, like $300 plus, we are looking for super high quality photography, a large space, and flexible terms. And a lot of those spaces being booked are typically for the larger productions. Those guests typically have comfier budgets to allow for that.
So, what about like, I know we talked about that you guys are in Canada and obviously in the United States. Are there specific markets that you find are most successful with this type of model?
Yeah, so it's pretty surprising, but for us, what has been the most interesting markets have been like more the secondary markets. So obviously, LA, New York area, big, huge production hubs. But the areas that have been really popular for us are like Colorado, Utah, outside California in general, outside of LA, Atlanta, New Mexico. Like there are all these like areas that have very budding production geographies. And so we've been trying to capture those. In LA, home studio list just isn't as novel of a concept, but to like our neighbors in Utah, they've never heard of this and they don't, their communities don't completely run around the production and like creative world. So we try to bring that to them.
That's an interesting point because when you were saying that, what I was thinking of, I'm a North Carolina girly, and I was just thinking of like Wilmington, which is known for some of its big productions like One Tree Hill, Outer Banks, stuff like that. And I'm like, I wonder, I've actually never looked in Wilmington because I've never shot as a photographer in Wilmington. I don't own any properties in Wilmington. Do you guys know, like, do you know if there's anything there that's like competitive?
I know North Carolina is pretty big. Wilmington itself isn't like ringing a bell to me as a super popular, but occasionally what we see is like maybe there's a lot of interest like truly from Wilmington, but if our spaces that like are interesting to them are a little outside, we start associating it with I don't know of an area outside of Wilmington, but we see that a lot. Exactly. We see like New Jersey for us is like super popular compared to New York, which you would think like New York would be a lot more. a lot more popular. But it's because people are traveling from New York to New Jersey to have like more space for a production in a home versus. So there has
And
been a
probably more
little.
affordable.
Exactly, yeah. And so I always am like trying to make meaning out of where our popular requests are and like where the actual demand lives. So that's a constant like data matching problem that I work through.
That's interesting. That don't count yourself out if you're not in like a major city. In fact, the demand could be higher because you're more accessible as far as price point and more attractive in terms of getting more bang for your buck because you might be a bigger property outside of city limits or outside of specific production heavy areas. Huh.
Yeah. And it is interesting too. We have a lot of teams who, for a large production, like mega multinational corporation, they will fly a team for anywhere for the right location. You know, you never know. Sometimes we get properties in like the middle of the mountains in Colorado or like California, and people say, I don't know if this will ever get booked. Like it's pretty far out there. But for the right like aesthetic, a lot of these teams are very comfortable. Like the budgets of productions just blow my mind. I continuously, every year, I'm like, how do these continue to grow? But I think the demand for content, for, the needs of a company to keep up with the creative that they need is like outrageous.
And another thing that I wanted to ask is, does it cost anything for a host to be on your platform to list their property?
Nope. It's completely free and it always will be.
So it can't hurt by listing the property. Like there's absolutely no reason that any short-term rental owner that has a beautiful, curated, aesthetically pleasing space shouldn't be on Home Studio List because even if you do get a request and you don't like it, you can deny it.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no downside. And we try to keep it really easy. So we're not like bugging you constantly. If we do get a host that rejects like 10 requests in a row, we'll typically reach out and just be like, hey, is everything cool? Like, should we change your pricing? Like, do you want to have more productions like XYZ? Or we try to keep it easy. And we do have like you can set your preferences. So, like you had mentioned earlier, if you know like you don't have weekend availability or you're just like I want to save my photo shoot days for this and this, we will update your listing page so that it is like reflective of your desires.
That makes so much sense. That kind of brings me to my next question. In the short-term rental world, there is a lot of seasonality, especially in specific markets. You know, for example, the mountains might be really, popular during peak foliage, or if it's by a snow resort, like winter's their on season. So is there a way that you can choose that seasonality as well in addition to like days of the week?
Like in a hacky way, yes. If you know, like we aren't going to be available from this month to this month, our team will actually just put your space on like hiatus. I would recommend honestly just leaving it up unless you're getting an outrageous amount of requests and it's like bogging you down. You never know when that request might come for a future date when you are available. So, say you booked a longer term stay from November to January, you might want to say, I'll pull the space off right now so we're not taking requests. But right now is when people are really planning ahead for Q1. So, like, by removing your space or like putting it on hiatus, you might actually miss out on people who are like planning and who want to book your space for February. So, I like to say, unless you know this is like a hiatus you want to take for a year, let's just leave it up and handle these requests as they come in. A lot of people are flexible on their timing too. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to be booked out through November, and they request for November, we can totally go back to them and say, like, how about December 1st? Are you guys flexible on your date? And just keep it open. So technically, yes. But also, I'm like, you might as well just kind of field them as they come in and we can adjust accordingly. When you become a host, you get assigned a curator on our team who is kind of like your manager and will basically help you with any questions along the way. They'll be checking in anytime you get a reservation. And so they're kind of like your little trusted home rental best friend in the home studio list world.
So, do you have any data surrounding the seasonality of bookings on the like production side of things? Like, is it more popular in the summer versus the winter, vice versa?
Yeah, so January is huge for us. Q1, I think people come in to the year just like ready to go, ready to embark on this new creative journey that they've been planning, plotting for the next year ahead. So Q1 tends to be huge for us. Also Q3. I think you're surprised to no one. Q4 is pretty quiet for us just around the holidays. Hosts are busier. Homes are usually decorated for the holidays, which can sometimes be a bit prohibitive. Obviously, short term rentals, I think, are probably more advantageous in that time because some productions are like, I love your Christmas tree up, but I need a space that's going to feel like spring because I'm shooting spring content. So, like, this isn't going to work for me. So that could be one competitive advantage of a short-term rental property during that time frame. But in general, I also see people on the guest and business side winding down a little bit for the holiday season as well. So we do get that big Q3 pop towards the end of summer. We're in it right now. We're just phasing out of it now, but it's usually when people are planning holiday for the year ahead. So
This is just becoming more and more attractive to me because Q1 is always so slow for us with bookings. That's always our slow period, at least for the Kentucky house. It's like this post-holiday travel hangover that no one wants to move or do anything. And budgets are spent, right? For Christmas gifts and traveling and all that. So I think this is so attractive for people that might have a quiet Q1 to be able to market their property to people that are geographically close to them and leverage it in a way that it's not been leveraged before to add that additional income. That is really, really cool. So that kind of leads me into one of my final questions. If I'm ready to list my home on Home Studio List as a short-term rental owner, can you give me like top two things that I need to do to be able to prepare it for Home Studio List outside of photography? You've already like made it very clear that should be a priority. And hopefully if it's an Airbnb listing, they already have those photos. So give me next two things.
I would say after that, like really comb through your schedule, get an understanding of when you would be available, think through kind of the types of productions you would be interested in. It's always a little heartbreaking when we get a new space up, it starts getting a lot of inquiries, but the host is like, actually, I'm not interested in this or this or this. So if we can kind of field those things up front for you, we can get you higher quality leads, get you booked, and therefore push you to the top of the algorithm and really like capitalize on that newness. We also do a big push for new listings. So when we do bring you onto the site, we send out a dedicated email to your geography. We are sharing on social. So we have a lot of momentum that we try to build up for you. And so follow us on Instagram so you can also be like cross sharing that content and really get as many eyeballs on your new listing as soon as possible. There's no downside. So get online, get listed, and we can totally fine tune the details as we go.
100%. Wow. Okay. This is a question, and it will be my final question, I promise. I asked to all of the guests that come onto the Branded Market podcast, what is your number one piece of advice for any business owner, could be a short-term real estate host, could be a real estate investor, to be the best in their brand and their market?
I feel like it's just timeless, but like really lean into your authenticity. When I started Home Studio List, it came from such an organic, like genuine interest, like desire to build. It felt so natural to me. And that energy has been the thing that's sustained this for so many years. Obviously, there's times I'm not as motivated and inspired, but I think like really coming back to the heartbeat of like why I built Home Studio List, that is like my superpower. And that's what I want to continue to like tap into and find energy from. So I think be authentic. Like we see that even in the styling of your space, like the spaces that are super popular on Home Studio Lists, like have an authentic point of view. They're like not afraid to maybe be a little niche and, special so that they have that resonance. The spaces conversely that don't do as well sometimes are just like the overly mass, like you've seen it a million times. It doesn't have that special little hook. So I think the same adage like applies to business as well.
Enough of millennial gray. Let your true colors show.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time, Hannah. I want to make sure that if any listeners are interested in hosting on Home Studio List, that they're able to. So, can you tell us where to find Home Studio List online?
Absolutely. We are online at our website, homestudiolist.com, also on Instagram and every social channel as at Home Studio List. Give us a follow. We'll follow you back. I'm in the DMs all the time. So if you have any questions about getting started, would be happy to help in any way and get those answered.
Well, thank you again for sharing this like no downside way of making more money for short-term rental owners. I think it's absolutely incredible. what you've built and the platform to help people make more money in a space that they already own and love. So thank you again, Hannah, for sharing all of your knowledge and your creation with our audience.
Yes, so happy to be here. And thank you so much, Allie. It's been so great to connect with you through this process.
You just completed another episode of the Branded Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.